said that the LGAs, the local government areas, allowed them. Also in 2008, only 80% of those surveyed said that the local government areas allowed them to participate in decision making. That same year, only 22% said their LGAs used the resources for public purposes. Only 20% said LGAs provided information on their budgets about expenditure and revenue. Whereas 75% said they have never contacted a councillor. And 89% of the respondents said some, most, and all LGA officials are corrupt. It's also the level of government that we're all least interested in, like I said before. I don't know how many of us who are seated here even know the names of their councillors. Maybe you do. I don't know the name of the councillor representing me. And I believe there are many people like that. I'm sure maybe you know the name of, you know the name of the president, of course. You know the name of your governor, of course. Maybe your senators and your House of Reps members. But as you go down, the level of interest, the level of awareness, the level of engagement just diminishes. I want to ask another question. How many of us will actually want to work for local government authorities? I did a survey in my own small office, and you could see people were shaking their head avidly, vigorously, that you wonder, that, okay, it's all right, just stop now. The point is made. The fact is that anybody who has the potential would rather want to work, if you want to work in government, you rather want to work with the federal government, or at most the state government. So if all of us want to work at the center and the intermediate level, so what do we expect to happen at that level? I also do not know how many of us know about how things are done, how government is run at the local government level. How many of us take interest in what goes on there? So on one hand, we can say all those things. They are corrupt. They are not publicly spirited. But it's like we have also ceded that space to them. So if we're not there, if we're not interested, if we're not involved, if we're not asking questions, my understanding of basic economics is that what is not demanded will not be supplied. And if people are thoroughly disinterested, then we also have a part to share about what our local government areas have become. The third point I want to share is that I believe that getting our local government areas to work optimally is critical. Actually, scratch that, it's central to making Nigeria work optimally. The local government area of government where you should experience and should feel the presence and essence of government the most. And if you can get them to work the way they should work, somebody is telling me that I'm speaking for too long. I'll say a few things. So I will argue that this is the most important. The federal government is important, the state government is important, but the government that you are supposed to, that people have kind of experiments all over the world in terms of enhancing and deepening democracy, society at the federal level at that level. But we also have rich associational life, we have cooperatives, we have age grades, we have all kinds of groups that you can also, we have, traditional institutions, and all of that, that we can kind of bring into this different way of making decisions. So in conclusion, I want to welcome you again, and I want to thank you for spending time with us, and I look forward to a very robust conversation. And please, we know all the problems. So let's, I'm using this privilege to be the last person that will be talking about problems. Let's all be talking about solutions. So yes, the Supreme Court has ruled. Yes, there will be direct allocations to local government areas. The question is, and so what? It's not that it will not work. And so the so what is that, what do we need to do to make it work? Thank you so much, and God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. I strongly believe that even as the Sao Nuhu Ozigi is representing the national president of Algon, is also here with us this very morning. Good morning to you, sir, if you're in the hall. Thank you so much, sir. And there will be other names that we'll be pleased to call out as we go on. But at this time, we'd like to take on the opening remarks that will be done this very lovely day by no other person than Dr. Kole Shetima. Dr. Shetima is the African director. Please let's keep clapping for him. Of the MacArthur Foundation in Abuja again. Before joining the foundation in 1999, Dr. Shetima excelled in his career as a university academician, and of course he holds his doctorate from University of Toronto and remains of great influence.
Thank you very much. I think for the purpose of this meeting, MC.
Yes, sir.
For the purpose of this meeting, you should introduce me as the teacher of Oti Dibuzo. So that I think is now introduction as well. I think that Waziri has wonderfully established a protocol, so I would like to disrupt that protocol. And he did say that I came early. I came early because some of you might have seen a Twitter handle that MacArthur is behind. There is a group that is called Joint Civic Defense Fund, who supports people who are harassed and who needs coverage. So I came and said to the person, look, I live in Kau. I need a relocation grant so that I can move to Metama. And probably I will be safer in Metama than in Kau. Anyway, so I'm still trying to negotiate how I can be protected as well. I recall that, I think it was in 2016, while he's still the president of Nigeria. I said, what happened? He said, look, the water in our community has not been functioning for the last week. For a week. I said, but why do you want Buhari to fix the water problem in our village? He said, well, Buhari is Gaskiya, he ensures things are done properly, and therefore his own conception is that President Buhari should be the one to fix that. I said, I have to tell you, there's a councillor representing the ward, there's the local government chair who is also there, there is our governor, our commissioner, all those people are there before we can actually come to President Buhari as well. But I think it shows what that conversation is really showing is the mentality of our people, that the president of the country is supposed to fix all the problems of the country, and that probably they don't even know who they could come and talk to at their own local level to even make complaints and other things as well. So I think that to me is the reality of most of our people and other things. Unlike Waziri, who asks people who will work in local governments and others, I have a friend of mine who accused me that, I've spent all these years studying, and went to the University of Toronto, got a PhD, so many years. But his own study, he said, is Gajere Me Albarka. So he went to do a certificate in finance at the college in Portugal. And he was appointed as a finance officer in the local government area. So he was telling me that I've gone to the PhD. Spent like, I don't know how many, so I went to primary, I believe that was 67 or something like that. My PhD was 97 or that, so maybe about 30 years or 20 years studying. And still struggling. But he has gone to do a 6-month course. I've been given a certificate in finance. I've been posted to local government. He's richer than me. So, but that is the kind of mentality of our own people, that if you really want to be rich, the local government is where you want to go to work. Don't waste your time at the federal level, where there's going to be scrutinies and all kinds of things. And for people from my own village, traveling all the way from village to come to Abuja to work is even a nightmare in the first instance. But they think that they are even actually better off working, spending 6 months studying in Port School to get a certificate in finance and go back to the local government and work, and then nobody talks about accountability, no talk about transparency, no one holds them responsible for anything. They think that they actually, even their own lives are much, much better than what they are doing and other things. But I think this really shows the level of the depth of the problems that we are dealing with. And so when Wasili said, we have this, can we use it for other purpose than what we say? Yes, why not? Because I think that one of the importance of institutions like Agora Policy Center is timely intervention in our national discourse and conversations. How do we take opportunities that arise in our system so that we'll be able to come up with ideas, solutions, have a conversation, and see whether we will be able to push the frontiers of policy making. And that to me is some of the critical things that we need to do and other things. And I think we need this kind of spaces where our people can come together, have a conversation, develop some ideas and other things. And as I said before, in many places, I think that one of the major challenges in our country is just the lack of space for policy conversation, which is very, very significant. And this lack of space is also, in my view, is why I think that many of our people who go into government, unfortunately, they always try to be in government. The American system, in my view, is very good in the way that today you can be a senator, tomorrow you'll be at a policy center, the following day you can be in a consultancy firm, the next day you can be the president of a university, the other day you can be the president of a foundation. So that opportunity of elite circulation, enabling people to move around and do many, many things is so important. And that's why I think that organizations and spaces like Agora Policy is so important to our country. So that we don't just get people stuck in one place and think that that is the end of their life. That if they leave something here, they cannot continue to be useful to society. And therefore they will feel that, okay, they just have to be there because that's the only space they know. And that's the only place that they can earn a living or do something like that. So I'm very happy, very excited that this is happening. And Agora Policy has come into a space, and I think that everybody in the country acknowledges the work that Agora Policy have been able to do in the last 2 years or so, years of policy conversations, coming up with ideas. And I think that we don't have to agree with the ideas they come up with, but at least these are ideas that we all debate, we can have a conversation about, and see whether they make sense and other things as well. So let me end by saying that I think even here in our country, we should also look at spaces. I believe that the local government councils and others and other people who are really trying to push this idea, local governance and number of local government administration are trying to incorporate many kinds of interesting ideas about how they do. For example, I know that Community Life Project have been doing this kind of work both in each state and also in the
Good morning. I'd like to start by welcoming Mr. Larry Issa Wonilu, the Director General NOA, as he gives his goodwill message, a very short goodwill message. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome. Please, let's keep clapping for him. I know we can do better with the clapping.
Well, good morning, everyone. I don't want to bother myself
with protocol since it's already well established. Let me say that I want to appreciate all the institutions that have come together to put this particular very important event together. The Agora, also let's start with where the money comes from, the MacArthur Foundation. Agora, the Cable, Premium Times, and all the rest, Budget, Yaga, Africa. I think that's about all. It is very interesting for us to have this at this particular period. I must say, we just had the Supreme Court coming up with judgment just barely a month ago or less, and I want to say the obvious challenge is what Waziri captured, so succinctly, about the fact that we may have just succeeded in opening 774 shares once called them. The people who might be going to the local government now, knowing that they have some form of autonomy over the finances, they just believe that it's now their time to also game the system. So we have a responsibility to put in whatever efforts to ensure that they see things differently. Those who are old enough to remember when local government actually existed will see the impact local government can make in the lives of the people. And the local government those days, the issue of security that we have today would not have existed because each local government can actually take care of its environment. And that also goes to other sectors of the life of the citizens. Agriculture, we used to have local government with tractors those days that they give to the people to have their farm, assistance to people to do their trading. But all of this had gone to the wind just because we completely obliterated the local government councils. So we are happy that we have local government, unlike Waziri, who is not going to look at the merit and the merit. I think it is a good thing that we have local government in our country. When you look at our circumstance as a country in terms of the multiplicity of ethnic group, you should have that kind of an arrangement where people can take care of their environment. Let me say at National Orientation Agency, just on the 30th and 31st of July, we were in Bauchi in collaboration with the Bauchi State Government, where we had an event involving, well, the title was Accountability and Transparency in the Local Government Governance. That just happened at 30th and 31st in Bauchi. And now we are working with the ICPC and EFCC to have this along with ALGOM for all local government in the country, so that as they settle into this new opportunity, they take full advantage of what we need to achieve. Hello. So now to round it off, I know I don't have much time here. It is a good thing that Agora is spearheading this, and we are happy to work with all the institutions that are involved as an institution that is also interested in the issue of value orientation, because the whole thing boils down to the value system. We must, as I keep saying, we must build Nigerians first before we can build Nigeria. Thank you very much.
We're truly grateful for your kind words. We must build the institution from the local government level all the way up as they understand the opportunity that comes with what they do. We'd like to welcome Mr. Friday Ebelo, representing Mr. Olukoye, the online with the EFCC chairman, as he also gives his goodwill message this very morning. Please, let's start from here.
Good morning. Good morning, all. I want to first of all thank the organizers on behalf of my boss, Mr. Orinda, drive this conversation home so that we can bring good governance back. Because at the end of it all, when we leave the cities, we go back to the villages. And we are more closer to the local governments. To me, good governance entails three critical elements, which has to do with accountability, transparency, and citizen participation. And for citizen participation to be effective, and for accountability and transparency to be effective, we need to have solid-minded people, developmental-minded people to man our local government administrations. It is on this note that we serve, the EFCC serve a notice to the local government administration that will not be as business as usual. The activities will be scrutinized. We must make sure it's a deliberate effort that we must bring the presence of governance to our people. The citizens have felt the presence of governance. Our local government, healthcare centers, our schools, we must be able to see that those development entities are driven to the local populace. It is on this note I want to thank the organizers for inviting us here. I want to thank you all and do have a fruitful collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, EFCC likes to pay attention to details. I'd like to welcome Dr. Otivo Igwezo. He's from the African Center for Leadership and Strategy Development, as he also gives his goodwill message this very lovely day. Please, let's clap for him. He's well celebrated in many circles.
Good morning, everyone. Let me join all others to commend Agora Policy and others for organizing this program. You know, at a time in this country, the federal government had a think tank. The ruling party had a think tank. And there were several think tanks dealing with policy issues. But today, there's no think tank. The ruling party has no think tank. The opposition party think tank is in limbo. The issue of accountability in local governance is key today. But as we discuss here today, I want to put two issues for us to consideration. To enthrone accountability in local governance, we need credible, free, and fair elections. I come from Delta State. When we do local government elections in Delta State. They don't even announce the number of votes. In my area, the area I come from is an APC stronghold. Delta State government is PDP. They don't even bring materials. I don't know whether you understand. People will go to the polling unit, they wait there, nobody will come. In the evening, they will announce results. So the first thing we must do in order to enthrone accountability at the local government is to ensure credible, free, and fair elections. The second thing, and I think this does not apply to only local government, both the federal, state, and local government, and indeed all governments across the world, accountability is ensured by 5 means. And that is why we have a problem in Nigeria. At times, we are looking for one singular thing, one bullet point, one leader who will come and change the entire system. As we discuss in this conference, I want us to consider these 5 mechanisms for accountability. Number 1 is internal system within the government. So every local government must have internal systems of budgeting, internal system of procurement, internal financial guidelines that are followed. Number 2 is legislative oversight. So the councillors must be organized to give proper oversight. Number 3 is independent mechanisms for monitoring local government, the like of EFCC and ICPC. And number 4 is the media, which has the constitutional responsibility for holding local government accountable. And number 5, more important, is citizens. Unless these 5 mechanisms operate with credible, free, and fair elections, giving money to the local government directly, let's remember there was a time where local governments were giving money to pay teachers and they did not pay. If we don't have these 5 mechanisms, we are creating another challenge. Once more, I wish all of us successful deliberations. Thank you.
Very grateful to you, sir. Thank you so much. Always a lot of power notes to take from Dr. Ativo every time he speaks. We'd like to welcome Malam Bolaji Abdullahi as well, as he makes his way forward, is the former Minister of Youth and Sports, to give us goodwill message this very morning. Please, let's clap for him as he steps forward.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The MC introduced me as a former minister. I'm not former minister, I'm one-time minister, because if you've left office for more than 10 years, I think you have one time or even once upon a time. But I'm glad I'm here today, thanks to Agora Policy. Mr. Kole Shetima, the only Kole from the northeast of Nigeria. I thank all of you. When the Supreme Court judgment came out, I listened to the various comments. What I found quite strange was that those who were celebrating the ruling said they were celebrating it because it has helped the cause of true federalism. Now, those who are opposed to the ruling, who didn't like the ruling, said they were opposed to it because it has retarded the cause of true federalism. How can the same ruling be supported and opposed for the same reason by different people? So I got and I called Waziri. Because I know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We may have but when something is based on normative principles, this what should happen. Oh, we want decentralization. We want autonomy for local government. This is what we expect to get out of it. But when theory jams practice, Waziri said we should not talk about the problem. We will talk about the problem because this is only by talking about the problem that we find our way to the solution. My primary concern here is that, like I told Waziri, I said, Waziri, this ruling, we may just have succeeded in putting the most important level of our education in the hands of the weakest tier of government. Now, when we talk about accountability, what comes to our mind is how we will stop people from stealing money. I've always believed corruption is a major problem. Stealing money is a major problem for this country and the reason we are not able to do a lot of things. But I want to say, that lack of competence is a bigger problem in this country. The biggest challenge we are going to face with this is lack of capacity at the local government level. And I say that with due respect to the Algon here. I've operated at the local government level, I know. So when we are talking about accountability, we should also spare a thought for how we are going to improve capacity at the local. I listened to my brother, Dr. Otive, he identified 5 principles that can help. And I was whispering to Bello Mandia there, I said, look, yeah, these are very good principles. But we all know that in this country, when things happen, people are already thinking of opportunities on how they can corner whatever is going to come to the local government. You know, so I hope that I'm going to sit here throughout the day because I want to learn. I want to know whether we can actually find solutions. I would actually have wished that we have some local government chairmen here who can also share their experience with us and we can learn from them. My hope is that in the end, we will not look back and say, that was a mistake. Thank you very much.
The one-time minister said jam, opportunity jam problem. Well, let's clap for him once again in his right, as he said so. Looking through the news earlier today, we saw stories. I mean, in Oyo State, it's been intriguing just to understand that 33 council chairmen as well, they are rethinking their commitment towards their service at that level. But it's part of the things we get to engage today as we introduce our panel, as we go through our speeches and understand. And essentially, that's what this assembly is all about. I'd like to, before we step forward, to recognize Mr. Friday Ode as the country director of Accountability Lab. He's also here with us this very morning. Good morning. Please, let's clap for him. And at this point, we'd like to bring on Ms. Ayomide Ladipo. She's head of Tracker, budgeted, as she makes a presentation on state of local government administration. Please clap for her this very morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to stand on existing protocols. This thing I say that in my next life, if I come again and I hear transparency and accountability, I'll run away. Because I've heard that word so much in my last 3 years. It's something that we have to deal with. So today I'll be talking about Nigerian local government, the state of local government, and the way forward. Mr. Waziri and the other people that have given good messages, they have highlighted some of the issues. But here we'll also be coming from the angle of how much financial resources they have gotten, how that has translated into good governance, if we think, and what is the way forward. So a very quick story. In May, I was at an event that had 2 local government chairmen on the panel with me. And if anybody has dealt with government people, no offense to the government people in this room, there's a way they look down and talk down on you as a CSO person or as a citizen, like, you people don't know what you are doing or you don't know what we are going through. Like they're in one exclusive club. They are doing something that the citizens are just berating them over. And anyways, we started the conversation. Let me move to, is this thing working? Okay. I want to move to almost the last slide. We started the conversation on online presence of local government, and the 2 local government chairmen, they talked about how their budgets were online and everything. Unknowingly to them, I'd already checked it before I came on the panel, and then I was telling them that you people are lying, this thing is not online. And they said, no, we are not lying, blah, 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 blah. They said, okay, let's check it. When we checked it, the local government only had their testimonials. I call it a testimonial, a document of, oh, we have shared 3 kekes, we have shared 10 this, we have done this, we have done that. And I was like, okay, is this a budget? And the next thing, the man said they should not give me the mic to speak again. Anyways, I met one of this same chairman at another event. When he saw me, he was like, this woman, you are the one that was tackling us that day. I understand where you were coming from, but I'll translate. If you come to my office, I can give you the budget, but we should put it online. Which means that what I was saying, he understands it, but it was not possible. That he cannot put the budget online, but if I come to his office and ask for it, he will give me. And it's just a testament of how much they have gotten away with, because they know the right things and they have failed to do it. While the Supreme Court's judgment is a step in the right direction, it does not absolve them of the many responsibilities they should have taken, either without their autonomy or with their autonomy in the first place. And that is where we as citizens, civil society, media have also come short, that we need to start talking of how to do better. So Mr. Waziri has said we should not talk about the introduction and the problems, but I'll just highlight some of these problems. Weak leadership, of course. I visited a local government chairman 3 weeks ago, and after we finished speaking, that was when he remembered, she vice chairman, what around? And when the vice chairman came in, it's not me, the man was looking like those thugs that they just put in place as a placeholder. You know, he sat down, they told him everything. Show you. And it's just a deficiency in personnel. That kind of person should not be in that place. But as Mr. Waziri has said, if they ask any of us in this room, who wants to work for local government, everybody will say no, including me, that I'm speaking English. But when we say no, we leave that gap for people who do not even know the next thing they need to do, to be there and to be managing the resources that determine our own livelihood. And that is a huge gap that we need to look into. Another councillor told me that we needed to come and train them on budget preparation, budget things, that all the councillors that he works with, they don't know anything about budget. They don't know how to prepare it. They don't know how to work with it. All they do is just bring it, let us sign, and go. What is our cut and this? So the personnel is a huge gap. Either there's already a gap from the elections to who gets in, but no matter who has gotten in, they are going to spend at least 3 years. How do we turn those people around to be able to have an understanding of how to govern us effectively? The big elephant in the room, which is excessive control and undue influence by state governors, we cannot over-influence that. We saw one of it last year, which was a show of shame with governor of Ogun State, which is unfortunately my state, Dakwa Abiodun, where the local government chairmen were in a room and they were prostrating to him. It was beyond humiliating. It showed how much we are deteriorated in our democratic governance, that local government chairmen were prostrating to beg woman that they are sorry. Anyways, personnel capacity, statutory revenue hijack, we talked about that. Then lack of democratic participation via regular elections and citizen engagement. We'll talk about the regular elections later, but for the part of the citizen engagement, as we are all in this room, who is our local government chairman? If we conduct a small poll, can anybody raise their hand if they know the name of their local government chairman? Okay. If I do like those statistics, I'll say it's just 25% of the people in this room. And it's actually a shame to us that, because you can get it between the time Mr. Waziri said that we don't know our local government chairman, it's something you can just Google and check, and you see it. So that you will still leave this room and not know your local government chairman. When you get home, you still not know your local government chairman. But then you still be able to be speaking English. So what exactly are we doing? And citizen engagement. We have pressure groups. We have, contrary to popular opinions, there are pressure groups, there are citizen associations that work at the local government level. But how do the local government work with these people? In 2021, I worked on a project with local government in Ikorodu and Shomolu local government. And when we met some people, we asked them that, do the local government, do they call you people when they want to do their budget signing, presentation and all that? Say yes, they call them. Which means that they pick a specific type of clothes on that day. they wear clothes, they come and do a fanfare, they share the rice, they sign the budget, and the people go. The people come, the associations, they have no knowledge of what they should do at that event. But because they just know they want to go there, collect rice, collect things, and that is the gap that the media and CSOs. So I would like that as we are all speaking, talking to each other in these fancy rooms, we are able to highlight exactly how we can plug ourselves in. Because there are groups of people waiting to absorb knowledge that we can give. And we have to take it beyond just discussing in rooms like this. Corruption and mismanagement of scarce resources, I'm not going to, that is already an established problem. Electoral integrity. I like that one of the speakers spoke about it, that elections is one of course, is the bane of everything. The first election I participated in was in 2021, and that was the local government elections in Lagos. And I remember vividly that, like you said, people did not know. People just saw it as a free public holiday. It was even a Saturday. People saw it as an opportunity to just sit at home, play football on the streets and all that. And the reason why I could participate was because I had a neighbor who was a headmistress in a public school. Of course, they are mobilized to vote. And she was like, yes, I want to go and vote and all that. So I followed her. And the people that came from the beginning to the end, they were not up to 100. And that's where we begin to ask ourselves, why can't we come out en masse for federal elections, governor's elections, and we cannot do the same thing for local government elections? What is the problem? Where is the gap? It is everybody. How many of us here have voted during the presidential elections and governor's elections? Please. How many of us have now voted the local government elections? Thank you. I would wish that I could ask someone who voted in a presidential election why they did not vote in a local government election. Can somebody help me with that? I want us to get an opinion from the audience so we can start seeing things to highlight. Okay, somebody at the tail end wants to answer the question. Yes. Okay, that's why you did not go and vote. Okay, thank you for the mic.
Okay, because I was saying that in a presidential election, there is a lot of awareness. INEC is the one that organizes the election, and a lot of media and every other thing is involved. But coming to the local government election, we don't even know, and from my home state, we don't even know that election is going to happen. We have something like an appointment and not an election.
Okay, so you did not know about the local government elections?
We don't even used to hear it.
If you say so. Since the Supreme Court ruling, about 15 states have announced local government elections. Please check if your state is part of them. These are very simple things that we can do on our phones. That doesn't require us going to do aluta or shouting. General function of local government in Nigeria, that is well established. Mr. Waziri has talked about that before. We'll move to the purpose of the presentation. So we did a small aggregation. Between July 2014 and June 2024, 17.5 trillion naira has been disbursed to all the LGAs. And this is almost equivalent to the same revenue that the federal government has realized in 6 years between 2015 to 2020. And to an extent, you can say, people in this room can say, oh, they can see the effect, even though we complain that it's not working, but you can see some of the effects of the federal government, but then people would say that they cannot feel the effect of local government. Meanwhile, the money they have to play around with is almost equivalent to each other. So where has the money gone? What is the current state of public transparency and online presence at the LGA level? And what is the state of personnel management? Public transparency, there's a lot of focus on the state between 2014 and now. CSOs, media, and everybody, we have done a fantastic job of making states to crank up their engines and become more open and transparent with their finances. Is there a way we can replicate that with the local government? And that is one of the things that I need people to start thinking. Sahara reporters recently, Premium Times, they've been doing a lot of analysis on the budget implementation reports of states, coming out to say, oh, Kano State Governor has spent 10 billion naira on renovating his residence, while schools and while education has received just this amount. What is stopping us from doing that with local government? How do we, everyone, find the opportunity to ensure that first, they start being open about their finances? That is simple and easy to do. That's like the quickest link that we can achieve. Either you have your autonomy or you don't have your autonomy. You have the records on how you are spending your money. How do we ensure that they put it online? And this is backed by the law. They're actually required by the law to do that. How do we fire up our advocacy? The way we fire up our advocacy for state government, federal government, how do we replicate that at the local government level? I would like to assume that because local governments are more fragmented and it will not generate, it doesn't look, I'm looking for the appropriate word. The word in my head is not appropriate. It doesn't look, permit me, sexy the way it would do when you call out a state government. So that work is not appealing enough, and I need us to find it appealing enough to do. If you check many of us, our website, where budget is also a culprit, we have loads of analysis on state finances, loads of analysis on federal government finances. But where is the analysis on local government? When do we start to actually do the work? Moving on. Okay, yeah. The trends of disbursement to LGAs in the last 10 years, if you look at this chart, I hope we can see it. Of course, we can see that from 2022, 2023, it has been going up. Of course, we all know why it has been going up, the fuel subsidy, foreign exchange gains. But can we say that we have seen the results in our own local government? I'll leave that for us to answer. This is the sharing. Okay. Why is this not showing? This is a very nice thing that will show. This is not showing. We compiled 20 LGAs with the highest and lowest earnings in statutory allocation in the past 6 years. And something very interesting is that out of these 20 LGAs, about 14 of them are in Lagos, who have gotten the highest earnings in the past 6 years. One of those local governments is the local government where I live in, is in Mushin local government. And of course, Mushin is known for, if anybody here knows Lagos very well, Mushin is known for being a volatile area, an area with enough slums and all that. Mushin is known for trouble. So how does a local government that ranks top, of course, almost top 1% or 2%, still manages to grasp with that level of underdevelopment? There are no good roads. There's no testament of that money anywhere in that local government. And I can speak for it because that's where I live. And it points to the same thing that we have been talking about, that if we don't find how to crank up the engine, this Supreme Court judgment is just another free for all for people to steal. So the dependency is something that has trickled from the state government down to the local government. Okay, I'll come back to this. Okay, it's not here. Anyways, you see a state like Bayelsa State, whose 92% of their revenue in 2022 was from FARC allocations. And no offense to the people from that state, but that is a glorified local government. If 92% of your revenue is from FARC allocations, then why do you exist? What exactly do you do? And so that is a culture. The culture of dependency is a problem. Then we should not now take that culture to the local government level. The difference is that the states have the freedom to exercise and enjoy their dependency, while the local government does not have to. Okay. While the local government does not have. We should not now do it in a way that the local government's autonomy will be an autonomy for mismanagement and corruption. That, okay, it's now a free-for-all thing. Everybody gets to start enjoying the largesse that they're sharing. And you can also see here how the money has been increasing. Alimosho, Abuja, Ajeromi, Felodun. These are the allocations, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2017 to 2023. And we can see how 2023 is one of the highest, has the highest actually, except for Amuodofin, has the highest number of allocation, but do we see the evidence? So where exactly is the money going? Okay, but they said I have 5 minutes more, so I have to just... Yes, before the state rulings, before the Supreme Court rulings, 462 LGAs were administered by caretaker committees. And it is baffling how the people in government who make the laws, break the laws, and there's nobody to actually check them. Because this is 60% of the country being run under illegality, but there's no one to check them. And after the Supreme Court rulings, we have seen about 15 states that have announced elections. So please check if your state is there so that you will not have an excuse that INEC, they are not publicizing it is the reason why. This shows the data. You can see that the LGAs under caretaker admin is 53.5%. This is after the ruling. Then the ones with democratically elected chairmen, they're 46.5%. So how do we have more than half of the country being run by legal councils and committees? And so states that have announced dates. Okay, my brother from Akwa Ibom, I can see Akwa Ibom here, October 2023. October 23, 2024. Please put it in your calendar so that you will not forget. You have different states, Bauchi, Imo, Kaduna, Enugu, Rivers, Jigawa, Plateau, Kogi, and so on. Yeah, and these are some of the issues that we need to consider. The procurement, of course, we don't even have the budget records. A small thing before I close up. I was trying to get the budget for Ikorodu local government in 2022, and the amount of calls I had to make, the amount of begging I had to do, when I finally got the document, it was delivered to me like a terrorist memo. Like, this was something that, top secret, this cannot go out anywhere. And you begin to wonder what exactly is being covered. But then when you even open it and see, you will see what is being covered. Anyways, all these things, the budget appropriation, the budget details, they are not available for the public to see, and that is a problem. Okay. Center for Transparency, sorry, I don't know the full. Thank you. Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity. They did a ranking of the statistics of local governments that are online. And only 7 out of 774 local governments had a website that they were able to find. And all of them scored 31% based solely on their website integrity and citizen engagement variables. I'd like to say a big thank you to Center for Fiscal Transparency for doing that work. Thank you very much. It's a step forward for everybody to take up the baton and start doing things like this. And look at what we have. So how do everyone, you can see 33 local government chairmen saying that in Oyo State, saying that they don't want their own money, or they want it to be paid. Collect your money and give it to your daddy when you collect it now. Why do you have to tell the government not to pay it to you? But then, if people like that, you can see them and you can hear them speak now. This is the time for us to start holding them accountable. All of them, they go and sleep. They go, what do they call it? I'm looking for the word. Yes, exactly. They hibernate. But when it's time for political issues like this, you start seeing them. Let's start taking advantage. Those 33 local government chairmen, let's ask them, okay, yes, you want this and this. Where are the records of what you have been spending for the last how many years? So I'm nearing the end of my presentation. What a working local government administration would look like, of course, and this is our goal, this is where we are going, quality service and infrastructure delivery. Administration is capable to manage and utilize resources effectively, robust citizen participation, and horizontal relationship between citizens and LGAs. That needs to be worked on by the media. Operations without undue interference from state governments, fiscal transparency and accountability, then lastly, free, fair, and periodic elections. Okay. I think, yeah, the focus issues for tax riot, which are the things, everybody in this room should pick the one that works with them and the ones that they can work on. Human resource capacity and development, quality of citizens' engagement and participation, electoral integrity, institutional accountability, fiscal transparency, accountability and governance, then civil society and media engagement. And these are the players involved in the task ahead. I wanted to explain more on what each person is expected to do on this place, but they are pursuing me. So I have to go. But of course, everybody here can see themselves. At least if you can't see yourself anywhere, you can see yourself in citizens. And there are media people here. Everybody is first a citizen before anything else. So everybody is here, and we have the work. And I'm looking forward to the panel discussion today, which will allow us time to explore how we can actually achieve this. Anyways, in conclusion, I'd like to use the last word. Democracy, proper democracy and federalism, as Malam Bolaji said, is needed at the third tier. And not just democracy, but effective, responsible, and accountable governance. In short, in summary, good governance is needed at the local level. Thank you very much.
A big thank you to Ms. Ayomide Ladipo, Head of Tracker Budget. Thank you so much for that lovely presentation, quite detailed. We must say that when it comes to local government issues, it's a little bit complex. There are so many things going on at the local government level, and in some instances, nothing is even going on. And you're tempted to wonder what type of problem is this and where do you want to start to respond to the challenges that are built up around it. I do hear the 33 local council chairmen said their biggest challenge, the ones from Oyo State, said their biggest challenge is that there's a part that says they have to generate income. And that is where the challenge is for them. To spend is not the problem, it's to generate income. That responsibility is a little bit too much. Okay, we will step forward at this time and then just take a dance presentation, a short drama presentation, I beg to say, from Aroja Royal Theatre. They're here with us, and shortly after we will move on to the panel. I'm excited to hear the solutions that the panel will bring forward. Please, let's have the theatre group come forward while we prepare for the panel. Some of the things you want to consider ahead of that panel conversation is, now when we think about that allocation that will go to local governments, mainly, yes, let them come forward. When we think about those allocations that will go to those local governments, one is tempted to ask about spending, accountability, transparency, who examines this, what data analysis exists around them, and much more. These are just some of the things that one would want to consider as part of the new, should I say, a sense of challenge that they would have to deal with when it comes to that particular terrain. And of course, there are about 774 local governments. That means there are 774 ways
in which different kind of challenges can be built up or can emerge at the end of the day. And that's part of the things that we would have from some of our esteemed panelists. And I do know some of these people well enough to know that they're passionate about these issues, they're grounded about these issues. And just like Dr. Otibo at some point said, that results show up even when there are no voting in some areas. And those are things you want to consider. What happens during the election? You want to ask questions about that. You'd want to ask questions about, did you know that local governments are also responsible for things like cemeteries in their various localities? One would also want to wonder about primary health care. What happens to those young men, women who are pregnant, mother and child? Will they be able to provide or use the resources allotted to them to carry out all that needs to be done? And then, of course, you want to talk about education as well at the primary level. Many of us would rather look the way of private schools along the lines of that consideration. This is me just almost starting my own speech in between this speech as we wait for the theater group to step forward at this time and all of that. But one thing we want to be able to also reflect on is to say, get ready your questions, your comments. We'd like to listen to your interventions as we go on, as the panel reflects on some of these things. And yes, this group, I want you to also know that this gathering essentially is an assembly, a think tank that helps us to chart the way forward before some issues go on. And such level of responsibility is what we expect from the group. All right, if you're ready, I'm ready to dance.
money they go. We cannot hold them accountable. I mean, how you tell my sister? You see, this town hall meeting will also allow us to know who our local government chairman be. But see, us as citizens too, we also get our own responsibility to play for this matter. Yes, we need to go out and vote during election period. Not only voting, vote in the right persons into this office. Exactly. Don't sell your vote. No collect rice, no collect Maggi, no collect salt, and voting wrong person. And they expect magic to happen. No. And again, we need to say no to God for that reason. No to everybody because your governor don't tell you to vote that person. No. Because anything where you see, you will take her. Madam, wait be that. What do you just do like that? See, this fine drainage wey they just do, you go put pure water later, you go put Coca-Cola bottle, you go sweep your dirty put am inside, block am. We as citizens, we need to keep our environment clean. Also maintain and protect these facilities where this local government chairman who built for us, so that we all as a community will enjoy this community. Exactly.
So the way we will talk am so, when this money come, if we really do am, the way we will take talk am, that's our community go good.
Yes, this Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Beautiful presentation from the Aroja Royal Theatre Group. The part that enthroned me the most in that presentation is when the woman threw the sachet into the gutter and said, "What did you just do?" You know, there's a big chance that some of the citizens may choose to run for office someday, and that's very important. But just to examine this conversation and deepen it today, in many dimensions, deepen it, direct it, and also help us to deliberate, dissect all that it involves, we will be taking a panel session now on accountability and local governance in Nigeria. And I would like to call forward the following people who are on the panel and also the moderator. I'd like to start with the moderator this time, Ms. Nabila Usman. Ms. Nabila Usman is a seasoned media professional with extensive experience in governance and public affairs. She is the head of programs at Radio Now Nigeria, and of course, she hosts the morning show there called Now Breakfast. Please, let's welcome her as she steps forward. Not missing out also on the panel is Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayede. He's a professor of political institutions, governance and public policy in the Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. He's a fellow of the Pan-African Scientific Research Council, where he is actively involved in promoting innovative ways and governance and issues around it. He's eminently qualified and continues to provide leadership even in the political science department from 2020 to 2022 of the same institution. You're welcome, sir. Also joining them on the panel will be Ms. Adebukola Shonibare, we popularly call her Buki. She's the Executive Director of Invictus Africa, a civic organization dedicated to promoting human rights and gender equality through data-driven advocacy and digital technologies. She combines her expertise across law, business, and human rights, and of course, is a fellow of many dignified institutions, including Oxford Commonwealth, as a scholar, among many other qualifications she has obtained over the years. And she likes to focus on human rights, gender, peace, security, among other things. Also joining the panel this very lovely afternoon, of course, but this time representing Honorable Aminu Muazu Mefatai,
Mefata, rather, who is the national president of Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, is going to be represented by Alhaji Salawu Nu Ozige, who, by the way, he himself is the DG of Algon, and today he'll be speaking eminently from the perspective of local government and some of the things they want to do. Oh, he's the acting DG. He has told me to add that in for clarification as well. Thank you so much. Please, let's clap for him. Mr. Samson Itodo, a lawyer, human rights activist, development expert, known for his work in promoting democratic governance and electoral reform in Nigeria, is also here with us. He's executive director of Yaga Africa, a leading civic organization that champions democracy, human rights, and youthful participation in governance. But Yaga Africa is also renowned for some of the campaigns, such as Not Too Young to Run campaign that successfully led to the reduction of age limits for those running for political office in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel for the day. Please clap for them. Over to you, Ms. Nabila.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And over the next 40 minutes or so, part of what we're going to try to do is perhaps give a bit of a brief summary of the problems. I won't mention Mr. Adio again because a few people have already said that he said don't talk about the problems, but we still need to discuss them. The bulk of this conversation will focus on how we can do better, right? How do we solve those challenges and how are we better prepared for this accountability at local government level? And I will start the questioning today with Professor Remy. You've done extensive research on local government and governance in the country. And this is a tier of government that has suffered a number of setbacks over the last 50 years. If you could briefly recap for us, summarize for us what these problems have actually been.
Well, there's been quite a number of issues at the local government level. I would capture it with this statement that local government has essentially been a top-down kind of structure where you have either the national government, the federal government, or the state governments designing and redesigning local governments as they deem fit for purposes that are either enumerated in the Constitution or purposes that are designed to promote their chances of success in elections. Then the second part is that not all of these governments, whether at the federal level or state level, were democratic governments. In fact, the major reforms have come from military regimes, which then means that structures at the local government, because they are created from above, need to be relocated and inserted or appropriated by local communities as their own government. So as we speak, local government are actually suspended in mid-air between the two higher levels of government and the communities where local government are supposed to have originated from. So we are in a transition process where we can make local government truly local, reflecting the aspirations, preferences, and desires of local people in their communities and neighborhoods, as distinct from government that reflects the aspirations of those who have created them at the state or federal government level, which then means that we must create local government or return local government back to the community so they are not only operating at those communities, they are part and parcel of the life of those communities. But right now, accountability, as we have seen from all of the comments, is a problem. Reflecting or representation is a problem. Resource mobilization is a problem. And that is why the money coming from the federation account has been either hijacked by those who have created the local government or hold the local government at the jugular. Or now we are saying, let's see if we take the money back to local governments, whether they can become local again. And already you see a lot of problems have been raised concerning the likelihood that merely transferring monies directly to the local government does not necessarily make them local. It might lead to what some people have described as the decentralization of corruption. And this is the crux of the matter. How can we make local government transform into local governance in which the non-correspondence problem, which means you have money coming from somewhere else, and you have people at the local government spending the money, and you think those people will be accountable to local people who are not source or are not part of the process of generating that fund. It's a big problem, which we call the non-correspondence problem. So these are the basic challenges of local government, chiefly because the reform started from the 1940s down to the Second Republic. Of course, before the Second Republic, we had the 1976 local government reforms, and now we are talking about the Fourth Republic, the challenges of which, of course, dates back to the very beginning of the Republic itself, when we have this challenge between President Obasanjo, who wanted to continue to pay money directly to the local government, state governors who think that the money should pass to the joint state local government account, and local government who think that getting money directly from the federation account empowers them to begin to decide, if possible, who will even be governor and who will not be governor. So the challenges are enormous and they are multifaceted, and we have to deal with it both in terms of the attitude of the federal government to local governance, the attitude of state government to local government, and then of course the behavior of elected officials at the local government level in terms of what they conceive to be the nature of local governance and its role. Now, when they were talking about the implication of the direct money in that drama, you will see the lady said, so that we can enjoy what our local government chairman has done for us, not what we have done for ourselves under the leadership of the local government. So that attitude of thinking that politicians in government are actually helping us or assisting us rather than being our representative is a big challenge. So anything that a politician does, either as chairman or governor or president, he has done it with his grace. So it is not our entitlement. We are not doing it together with him. We must thank him always for even doing something at all. Otherwise, he could as well not do anything at all. We need to change that culture of power. And it's a very vital aspect of moving from government, local government, to local governance.
Thank you, Professor. And we'll come to that because you've said something, moving from local government to local governance, and I know that we'll circle back to that in a bit. At this point, I want to turn to DG Ozigi. A lot of issues have been mentioned, right? The professor himself has just laid out what the problems are. One-time minister had talked about how financial autonomy is just one thing, but it doesn't mean we've solved the issues. But financial autonomy does solve at least one issue, in fairness, right? What's Algon planning to do in terms of ensuring that this one issue that has been solved actually bears fruit and people can see it?
Thank you very much. I will start from where the professor mentioned, because we are practically on the field. Policies in this country, as it concerns local government administration, has to be bottom up in terms of initiation, implementation, and otherwise, so that we can achieve maximally what is expected. In most cases, like the Prof has said, policies are made up, down. And in most cases, the subnational governments, we just have to find a way of putting their foot on ground to implement. That's why we have a lot of problems. However, the Supreme Court judgment has come. Apart from going to God, I think that is the highest level of decisions that we think can be taken here in this country, regardless of the 32 or 33 local government in Oyo State. We do know from the exposition that the lady who presented here, where some local government go to frustrate for their governors and all of that, every problem we do not want to bring into this problem, into this engagement. We want to just provide solutions to them. Algon is aware of the impact of this pronouncement, especially on the areas of accountability and financial autonomy granted to local government. We are sure and ready to provide a financial framework for the 774 local government to work with. Just like it's identified, we need to give them a template in terms of budgetary provisions and preparations. They need to know and also follow what the federal government and some state government do, that they have proper bookkeepings and accounting systems in place, an annual audit, a domestic report from time to time on an annual basis, the independent audit by the other financial and corrupt institutions that have been set by government, so that they can see that yes, more funding is being allocated, but all the responsibility has to be discharged within the law establishing the local government. The functions of local government, I don't want to belabor. The fourth schedule of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is very explicit about it. But you also discover that in some cases, the capacity might not be there. It is not all local government. Remember that you have the cities, some cities, that I call them city local government. They have all this capacity. At least you can get nothing less than 70 to 100 of them in this country that have all the prescribed experiences in Lagos, in Kaduna, in Kano, in Rivers, you know, some of those fields that I can mention. Whatever quality you think you have, the federal services are also available there. But all they need is to give them the direction, especially on how to do things and do it right. And that is why we have been working with a lot of partners, CSOs. One that I'm very familiar with here in this hall is the Center for Fiscal Responsibilities. We've been trying to put heads together to see how we can have, on the issues of transparency and accountability, bring in the local government to speed with what we're having with the federal government. That's at its main. Decentralization of power, we have no doubt, works everywhere. Sometimes we look at local government here in the Nigerian context as if it is completely local. It is not true. The local government has the United Cities and Local Government Organization in West Africa, in Africa, headquarters in Rabat, and the Commonwealth in the UK, and the US hosting the world body of the United Cities and Local Governments of the whole world. So what we're saying is that there's an international standard to run local government affairs in terms of finances and administration. We're trying as much as possible to bring our members to also participate at all these fora, get to know what they need to do, and bring it to bear in their various states in this country.
DG Ozigi, before I move off, right, I just want you to expand a little more. So your response has touched largely on financial autonomy in itself, right? But the other bit is the accountability side of it, financial accountability of that financial autonomy now. And you started to touch just a little. If you could expand a little on what Algon is doing to make sure that these 774 local government areas are ready to actually be accountable for this money.
Over 774 local government. You know that some states also create some local
LCDAs.
councils. All is just to deliver the good services that is expected from the government at that very level. Yes, the state government in most cases are expected to put some framework, financial framework, for their local government in most cases. The auditors are in the state level, and they are also expected to give them approvals for external audits, for example, to be able to show accountability. Now, I think all of that may need to be brought to the fore for serious discussion and possibly actions that can really solve issues of accountability. But it's not as bad as we think. I want to bring us back to speed. Every local government that is worth a local government has internal auditors. Every local government has a treasurer. So also those who are elected councillors have responsibilities that are assigned to them, to take care of that. Of course, we know that the mobility towards the city sometimes affects some of the manpowers that are required to be there. We have our youth here, everybody wants to be in the city. I think we should also go down to the local government and participate. That's why we are talking about the citizens' participation, at those levels. We need to know that at whatever levels of government you serve, it is service to the nation, it is service to humanity. And I think that's all. Then in terms of accountability, like I've said, fundamentally Algon is trying to put in place some framework that will help the local government to be more accountable. We know that with the financial autonomy, a lot of responsibilities, and the eye is now on local government financial management as well as administrative management. Yes, everybody has to participate to make sure that we demand for what is required, and get some of those mechanisms that will help us, on having proper accountability and transparency in our dealings. For example, somebody mentioned issues of elections. We're happy that state governments are now going to election. Why sudden? We should ask ourselves a question. Why this sudden rush to do elections? Are the framework for this election properly put in place? For you to have an election, I want to believe that 6 months may just be barely enough for you to plan your review of voters register, plan your delineation of the voting centers, polling stations, do one or two things, do some due diligence on the candidates and all of that. And of course, some of us believe very much that independent candidacy should help in this case, because we all know how powerful, in quote, the name I don't want to mention here, I'm their employee, but we need to have experienced people, skilled people like we used to have in the past, who after having served even in this public sector, now go to their local places to deliver services. And in that case, money, corruption is not what you'll be hearing. They want to deliver services to humanity.
Thank you, DG
so all of that we need.
I'm glad that you started touching on elections, because it allows me to turn to Mr. Etodo now. In March of this year, there was a paper that was published, and Professor Rotimi Suberu, who's a professor of politics and international relations, contributed to that paper, right? The professor described local government elections in Nigeria as, quote, travesties and farcical rigmaroles, right? And we've got DG Ozidi already touching on this matter. We saw the list, the schedule for the 15 states or so that are planning local government elections in the coming months. How would you, from your experience with Yaga Africa, how would you describe local government elections in the country? Do you agree with the rigmaroling of it all?
Well, thank you very much. And thanks, Mr. Waziri, for hosting such a very timely conversation. I think that it is public knowledge that what happens at the states is what you call electoral coronation. There are no elections at the state level. And there are diverse reasons why you have very flawed elections. And it didn't necessarily start from today. If you look through history from the 1950s till date, the number of local government elections that to a large extent meets the integrity test are not more than 3. And why is that the case? It's the case because, one, the institutional framework for conducting local government elections is very weak. So you look at the state independent electoral commissions, they don't have operational autonomy, they don't have financial autonomy. And what do we mean by operational autonomy? The Constitution clearly subjects the guidelines and the regulations of state independent electoral commissions to the approval of the governors. So whatever the state independent electoral commissions do, it's subject to the approval of the governors. But in the case of INEC, the Constitution clearly says that INEC's rules and regulations shall not be subject to the approval of any person or the president. And so governors can do what they do with state independent electoral commissions because there is no operational autonomy. The second is financial autonomy. Whilst INEC's budget is funded from the consolidated revenue, which is a first-line charge, at the states, there are only 2 institutions that are funded from the first-line charge. First is the state legislature, and second is the state judicial commission. And so there is need to strengthen financial autonomy, you know, for state independent electoral commissions. The third is the lack of tenure for local government councils. That, yes, whilst democratically elected local councils are established in the Constitution, but their tenure is not expressly stated in the Constitution. And this is why governors can leverage on the gap in the law to dissolve, you know, local councils at will. So these are some of the issues that need to be addressed, because if you're going to give life to the Supreme Court judgment, I totally agree that you need credible elections so that governors do not appoint or coronate their stooges into public office. And adjoining, you know, to that is this debate that INEC should be responsible for conducting local government elections, or a new, you know, institution should be, a new national body should be established for creating national local government elections. And I totally agree with you, Malam Bolaji, that there's a big debate about federalism here, and we need to be very clear about whether we want centralization or we want decentralization, or we want to balance this. And I know that we're going to be grappling with this dilemma. But for local government elections, let us strengthen state independent electoral commissions first. Implement the same reforms that are implemented for INEC, as opposed to either scrapping the sex. If you ask INEC to conduct local government elections, it is the same INEC that has repeatedly said that we are overburdened with a lot of responsibilities. I know Mr. Waziri and I don't agree on this particular proposal, but it's a debate. I don't think that INEC should be saddled with the responsibility for operational reasons, but also the fact that it defeats the whole notion of local autonomy. And lastly, is the fact that another agency does not in any way serve or address the fundamental problems. Strengthen sex, and they will even conduct better elections than INEC.
Thank you, Mr. Todo. All right. Okay, the microphones are back. Thank you very much for your submission, and we'll circle back, right? Ms. Jonibara, you have worked extensively with marginalized communities, right? And this is a conversation we must have and center in the conversation on local government autonomy. Because these are 774, in many ways the tribal and ethnic side does not come to the fore. The one that comes to the fore in terms of marginalized communities is gender, women. In 2015, data put it at 3.6% of offices at local government level were held by women. We can talk about the data even at federal level. Recently, we were talking about it with the National Assembly and how we have continued to reverse the gains that were made about 10, 15 years ago. speak to us on what the data says at the moment with women and their representation across these local government areas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Waziri, for inviting me here. I don't take this platform for granted. And why this platform is also important is because when the decision was made on July 11th, one of the things that I recall I was thinking to myself, and I think Budget had also tweeted something that they were going to do. I kept asking myself, where's the gender component of this? But beyond gender, where is the inclusive component of this, the equality component of this? And oftentimes when we talk about gender, along the lines of local government areas or even Senate, governorship, we usually just think of the number of women or the percentage of women, but it's deeper than that. Now, you mentioned the data for 2015, which puts the figure at 3.6% female representation among the chairpersons of local government areas. You would be shocked that, so we started collecting the data also at Invictus Africa. And right now what we have is, so we segmented it, but there's an average. We segmented it according to elected local government. So like Ayomde rightly mentioned, there are elected local government, but there are also caretakers, right? Now for the elected local government, we have just 19 states that have elected chairpersons, just 19 states. Now out of that, now in that 19 states, there are 372 local government areas. Now that means we have 355, so we have 355 chairpersons. Only 16 of them are women. That means we have just a 4% representation. So that means we moved up by only 0.4% between 2015 and now. When we come to the caretakers, let's say we even give them some form of credibility, right? We have 15 states that have caretakers with 352 local governments, and then we have 330 of them are male caretakers, 22 are female caretakers. That means we have a 6% representation. So let's say caretakers, let's match them with the local government. That means that across both of them, we have an average of 5%, because 4% plus 6%. That means we've only moved up by just 1.4%. The same thing that we saw in relation to the Senate, the House of Reps. At the Senate, we have just 3 out of 109 who are women. That is a 3.7% representation. The House of Reps, we have only 16 out of 360 that are women. That is a 4.4% representation. And then you come to the State Houses of Assembly, we have only 50 out of 990, 993, and that is just a 5% representation. The sad reality about this is that it falls very short of the 35% that we keep asking for. You go to countries like Rwanda on the Interparliamentarian Union ranking, Rwanda is always tops, and that being at the top in terms of female representation did not happen by magic. They made specific actions. But I want to close my thoughts by tying this to the responsibilities of local government and why this is quite important. And it's first to, Mr. Waziri reeled out 6 responsibilities, but permit me to lump it into 2 for the purpose of this conversation so I don't take too much of our time. And first is the fact that local government areas, and I'm tying this to human rights principles as well, local government areas play civil and political roles. And in that civil and political roles, one of the things that you see is how local government areas promote local democracy, or democracy at the local level. Now let's link these to marginalized groups. But let me quickly say, when we talk about historically marginalized and disadvantaged population, we're not just talking about women. Women is the entry point to that conversation, but we're talking about women, youth, because despite the not too young to run and build, we still have an underrepresentation of young people. We're talking about persons with disabilities, but we're also talking about ethnic minorities as well, because they play a huge role, especially at the local level. Now, when you look at the responsibility of the local government areas in relation to civil and political roles, you're looking at how they promote local democracy. But in promoting local democracy, you are looking at first the fact that they promote political education, democratic education, civic education. But most importantly is that they promote the participation of whether men or women at that local level. Now, oftentimes, and I'm sure that some of us must have abused somebody who went to vie for the position of the president, and you say, go and start with your local government first. And sometimes it sounds condescending, but a lot of times, people who start at the local government level are gaining some form of political experience around accountability. So it means that even if at that level, whether it is electoral coordination that is happening or proper, elections, electorally elected people, democratically elected people, women are still, all of these groups are still underrepresented. What are we setting ourselves up for? It means that they are not having the kind of experience that they would have in order to give them that political, leverage to be able to advance to more positions. But let me close my thoughts by talking about the importance of law and order that is promoted at the local level. Oftentimes when judgments are made, and permit me to use, when judgments are made, for instance, using the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, what you see is that the local government helps in the enforcement of that law. So we talk a lot around laws, but we don't have enforcement of those laws. In enforcement of laws, the local government area play a huge role in that. But what do we see? In the local government playing a huge role in that, they are working with the police, they are working with the traditional leaders, they are working with community leaders. But how do you think that proper enforcement of laws in a deeply entrenched patriarchal society will happen when the traditional leaders who are supposed to help in the enforcement of the laws bear their own intrinsic biases? Patriarchy is worse at the local level. So you believe that this girl has been sexually abused because she wasn't supposed to be out at a particular time. A court has ruled that this person shouldn't have been raped, and then certain judgment has been made. Now you want to work with that traditional leader at that level to pass that, then that will not happen. Finally, is the socio-economic role of local government areas. Like Mr. Waziri said, promotion of services, provision of services. And my only example on that, because I know you want me to finish now, is in the fourth schedule, you will see that local government areas play participatory responsibility in advancing things like primary education, pre-primary education, and vocational education. It's there in the fourth schedule. But we know that even in relation to education, we have a huge underrepresentation of not just women, persons with disability. So this is where the local government will come in. And so long as we have an underrepresentation of women who are supposed to advance gender-sensitive policies, contribute to gender-sensitive budget, we are going to keep marginalizing these people, despite the fact that we are having operational or financial autonomy for local government areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jonibara. I mean, the points that you made very critical, and it was very interesting to see the appointed caretaker chairpersons and then the elected. It speaks to our historical trajectory of you find more women in appointive positions than elective positions, right? And big questions on just the capacity building that needs to happen at the local government level, especially with promoting the gender policy. You mentioned Rwanda and the Interparliamentary Union, but we know that that's because they have a law that actually sets aside a number of seats, something we are trying to do at the moment. And I'm only espousing all of this because I know that, again, it's important we center it in local government accountability and autonomy. Professor, I want to come back to you, right? We essentially unpacked this Supreme Court decision and the very immediate impact that it will have, right? Some of the challenges we're facing. But if we didn't have to come to a judicial pronouncement that helped our local governments be independent as much as possible, if we were starting this from scratch, looking at the reforms you mentioned from the 50s, the 40s, all the way down to where we are today, where would we have started? Is financial autonomy the magic bullet that we should have started from?
I think it's very far from it. Let's look at the manner the local governments were created and the way they operate. First, you see, local government multiplied very rapidly over the years, not led from the communities, but by those in power who decide to create local governments as largesse to various places, especially where they come from. That creates a number of problems. The first is that you have communities, especially cities, fragmented into multiple local governments. So you have a city today running, where you have multiple local government running without any of the local government communicating with each other. So which means that city management is already fragmented. So we don't have a coordinating governance structure for cities. And that's why inequality, infrastructural deficit, problems of even supply of basic services are really terrible. And it is worse in suburbs, in the ghettos and all of those places where you have poor people. So how do you begin to get this local government work together, recognizing the fact that they exist in a common city? Now, instead of having governors creating frameworks for this local government to work together for the city, what they have done is to usurp the functions of local government, especially in terms of those viable local governments in the cities where some of those sources of revenue mobilization for local government are likely to be very effective. So you need to deal with that. Then the very structure of local governments, whether they are numbers or where there's local government or not, there's a huge controversy around that. And that's why I say that's a difficult task to do, because if you look at the provisions of the Constitution, there's a long process you have to go. So the short-term way of getting the best out of this direct payment to local government is to initiate some kind of political process where both the federal government and the state governors can meet to negotiate so that they can create an environment in which the benefits of this decision can be met. We have seen this happen during the offshore, onshore decisions of the Supreme Court. And when President Obasanjo realized that it's going to be very challenging to implement, he went to negotiate with the governors, preferring a political solution, even though the Supreme Court has already given a directive. So we need that kind of political discussion, dialogue among the federal government and the state governors so that this can be meaningful. And it's very important because if you see the discussion, how it has gone, you'll find that state governors, some of them, or quite a number of them, are displeased with the way the president went about this. They also know that the decision of the Supreme Court is a fait accompli, but they know they wield power. And then you already see them screaming. For instance, in Oyo State, 33 local government chairmen have come to say, oh, we don't want to be part of Argonne. We want our monies paid into the John State local government account. And you're wondering, do they think they can disregard, the Supreme Court's judgment? Then you can also ask the question, is it the voice of Esau that we are hearing, but it is the hand of Jacob that we feel? So there's need for a political discussion around this to make it meaningful. And the state governors are very central to this. Then the other part is really that if you go back into history and look at the way local governments have behaved, and you also pay attention, of course, the Argonne is represented here, what is their thinking about the newfound revenue that's going to come directly to them? We go back to history. What they did during that period was to go to the National Assembly through Argonne to say, extend our tenure, whether our governors like this or not. And once they have the support of the president, the tendency is that they want to confront the governors. In fact, in that period, they organized what they call the grassroots democratic movement, thinking that with the resources of the local government, they can't challenge politically the influence of state governors at the local level. So we don't want this local government process to be immersed into competition between the federal government and the state government over control of local government, and a situation where local governments will think, oh, it is the federal government that butters their bread and they want to side with one. So we need some kind of consensus among these multiple levels of government so we can have meaningful transformation at the local government level. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, what we are looking towards is some kind of local governance. And that's possible within the context of governance as distinct from government, where we recognize that it is not only the officials of the local government that are present in the local government, and that it's not only the government, the local government that hold the initiative for development of the local government, whether in terms of raising revenue or in terms of getting initiative and resources to embark on local development projects. We have NGOs working in local governments, we have civil society organizations, we have community-based organizations, we have traditional rulers, we have the Parents Teachers Association. We can name a list of all kinds of organizations present at the local government that can be mobilized, to support governance and development activities at the local government level. And that is actually where we should look at and not think that everything about local government is about the revenue that comes from the federation account. That itself is already immersed in the kind of controversies that I think will make a mess of the situation. So we need some kind of political negotiation, mutual recognition and understanding moving forward. So that kind of environment will be fertile, for the Supreme Court decision to make sense and to achieve the kind of autonomy and development initiative that we envisage for local government.
So consensus being very key, and ideally, if you're going to carry out reforms anywhere in the world, right, consensus would be a way to chart a path forward, at least a path of least resistance, put it that way. And maybe that is going to be one of the truest tests of this latest reform. Time will tell, we'll see how it unfolds. DG Ozigi, a lot of people have accused the local government chairpersons, whether elected or appointed, of being some of the least qualified persons, right? In many ways. And we've already touched on some of those issues where they are underqualified. And I know you will speak about some people who are qualified and are doing the work but the problem is that they are in the minority, right? So I'd like you to speak to us on the challenges that chairpersons face. Financial autonomy is on one side. What are the other challenges, right, that people need to be aware of and we can start to tackle?
Thank you very much. I think whatever input I'm giving is, if it's good, is the national president of Algon that has spoken. But if there is anything, it is a personal opinion. Thank you very much. Local government executives, like we said, sometimes I think we need to define the kind of qualifications that can get them there, experiences that should get them there, and all of that. Of course, we know that the governors have a lot of powers, they yield a lot of powers and influence, and a lot of interference in several areas, both political, financial, and otherwise. And sometimes I think we overemphasize sometimes that some of these people are not qualified. In most cases now, in every local government, all the city people here, the most qualified person belongs to one local government or the other. That's why we say it's everybody's responsibility. It shouldn't be left to any particular set of people to manage the local resources. That is very, very enormous. But to me, like we've said, the Nigerian Constitution also, if we implement properly the way it's supposed to be, I don't think there will be issues or even financial autonomy or otherwise, because Section 162, some subsections, has really clearly stated what the officers need to do and the consequences for not implementing what they're supposed to, the policies they're supposed to implement. But however, I still believe that we can define more. Like we said, some of us met a local councillor that is almost like as respected as a commissioner in the state those days, because they are experienced people, like I've said. They are retirees who have seen it all, and they will set up the procedures internally and externally that need to be set to run the local government in a very accountable and transparent manner. You know, so we need to rethink and look at the qualifications of the people. The qualification might not be just the educational qualification. Maybe they need to, you can have the traditional rulers vouching for certain group of people, you know, to run at that very level of governance. And the emphasis, like we have said, every level of government is very important, because we know that it is the allocation of our resources that is involved. It is our political future that is involved. You know, so all of that we need to understand and be able to give our contribution to helping the local government. So many things happening. Before this financial autonomy, we have had a struggle with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. You know, you remember that. All of these, those things came up because of the security challenges. It was just coming up then. Minor arms at the local communities, and we thought it was a joke. It snowballed into what we have today as the insecurity all over the country. Virtually nobody is saved, you understand. So when we started that, it was like a joke. We were making all our efforts to make sure that local government, whatever challenges that faces them, we can adduce solutions to them from time to time. So, but what is important also is at the policy level, I've mentioned it, just not to waste our time, that our policies must be bottom-up approach. All strategies for policies, if you want it to work at the local level, go down, then come up. You will get it right. But this one will sit in the cuisine of our offices and chambers and other places, and we are dishing out some of these things. It might not be able to be as effective as expected. You know, that's one. Like we've also talked about community policing. These are issues that are very germane to us. Few securities are very germane to us. Energy provision that is very germane to local government. At Algon, we are trying to spread that. And fortunately for us, we now see investors who wants to come on these sustainable energy areas using the natural gas or the condensed natural gas and all of that to generate little power generations within our local areas, because we know this will affect the artisans, the very low group of people within our communities that will help them. You know, sometimes the impact of this autonomy pronunciation, yes, it might not look like anything to so many of us, you know, looking at the dynamics of politics in Nigeria, but we are surprised that so many people, everybody is coming up and looking at, okay, look, these things should go down. Development, growth and development should be from down up, because the components of the local government make a state, and the composition of the state make a nation. You know, and obviously all of us are from one local community or the other. So we need to look at all of this together and know all of us participating in whatever role and all of that. Sometimes if we, like the CSOs, if you begin to ask questions from an executive, whether it is caretaker or even elected, and you say, where is your budget? We need to know your budget. It is the right. It's our right to know, you know, how you are planned to generate your revenue and your plans for expenditure. They will look at all of that. And of course, you have to remember very vividly that some of the assistance and intervention that we are having at the state and federal level are not available to local government level. You know, when you are looking at the serious financial implication, yes, the money that we are talking about might be so high. You know, remember that the revenue sharing, local government get the lowest. You understand? And some of those things, if you look at the inflation, that by the time we talk about inflation accounting and financial management, you know that what you are buying, you know, will almost be at the same rate. You are still operating, but because of inflation, we think that the quantum of money or funds that is available to local government is so much that we think that it could be embezzled. You know, however, you will need to put in place all the legal framework, all the financial framework, all the corruption, anti-corruption frame and regulations that will guide the local government in managing some of these funds. And all of us have to speak to it, and that is the fact. You know, so that's my suggestion.
I mean, when we're discussing how much the local governments get, especially since we've just talked about financial autonomy, I wonder how many of us ask the question of, all right, you got XYZ billion this month, how much of that did the Supreme State Governor tap into, and how much of that was actually available to the local governments to actually use, right? So, and I'm not going to put you on the spot to answer that.
I will not answer.
I don't expect you to, but it does give me the chance to come to the question to Mr. Itodo. There's a lot of fear, right, that this judgment and the governors who are racing to now ensure that they have elected officials in place is all, what's the word? Wuru is what Nigerians would say, right?
Charade.
Yes, it's a charade, that in the end they would still pull the strings behind the scenes. And for the few states that have conducted elections in the last couple of months or so, you find the same pattern, right? Whatever the governing party is, that's the party that has cleared all the seats. I forget the state now where opposition parties didn't even bother to be on the ballot altogether. So how do we ensure that these local government chairpersons, even if they're elected on the same party as the executive, the governor in this case, how do we ensure that they're truly independent?
Thank you. Like I've mentioned, the first...
Mr. Ozigi.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to get what you
Yeah, yes.
How do we strengthen their independence? I think there are three things. The first is to acknowledge that there's a socialization problem here that needs to be addressed. And so we have a lot of assumptions. And once this might sound very pedestrian, but the truth is, there's a lot of investment that we need to make in socializing people, including those who are in local governments and how their functions and their roles. We make the assumption that yes, people know, or even those who are in the local government councils, they know. No, one of the biggest shockers and lessons from our work on local governments over the last 10 years was the fact that even the officials themselves are unaware of their roles. They are also unaware of the powers that they have as local councils. So there is need to invest in that socialization. And that's the only way that you liberate or you strengthen your independence. Because if you know the right questions to ask, and you know who's role responsible. The second point about independence really lies in the point Dr. Otiwe made about the role that citizens play. That whilst financial autonomy to a large extent have been granted to the local governments, but it's insufficient. And you need to have citizens get involved. So a local government gets this money. The big question is, who is setting the priorities at the local government's level? In terms of the projects and the actions that local councils take. Now, who decides? Who is in the room for that decision? And this is where, in the last 5 years, we've been experimenting deliberative democracy in a few local governments. We started this experiment in Lagos and Sokoto. Currently, we're in Lagos, and we've been working in about 6 local governments in Lagos, where we've introduced public deliberation as one of the tools of deliberative democracy in fostering citizens' participation. And what it simply means is you have an alternative form of public decision making that is not necessarily the sort of legislative council that you have at the local government level. Because at the local government level, we have legislative councils like you have, at the state and at the national level, and that's comprised of councils. And so citizens are selected at a randomly representative manner
cutting across different sectors of that particular society. They come, they set the agenda in terms of the priorities, and the government is going to allocate certain resources either for healthcare or for education or for any sort of infrastructure project at the local government level. Once it is resolved at that people's assembly that this is the priority, the legislative council cannot deviate from that resolution. It is bound to implementing that decision because it's a decision that has been taken from a collegiate representative sample of the people. And just I think last week or so, my colleagues were in Lagos, and we discovered in one of the local governments, especially the proper local governments, where in the previous people assembly, one of the issues they raised was the need for a primary health care center. And last week, we just discovered that the local government actually built the primary health care center in Kushope local government, and they had celebrated the fact that we got a people's assembly that provided an opportunity for people. And there are different ways of doing that. The second about how to strengthen the independence is what's the consequence when governors decide to encroach on the independence of local governments. And this is where we need further legal reforms to strengthen local governments. So what we currently have in the Constitution is grossly inadequate. And in the last 2 or 3 cycles of constitutional reform, there's an attempt to properly establish local government councils with different institutions that are responsible for holding and strengthening local government councils at that level. I will.
This one is. Take this too.
So that's that. And when you think about the consequence, and this is the role that, both stakeholders, every stakeholder plays. The truth is, yes, we understand they are your employees, but the biggest problem of our local governments, they know it's not the institutions. They know it is the governors who are the biggest problem when it comes to the independence of local government councils. Yes, you can have the Constitution, and that's why the whole essence of rule of law is critical. That even if you enshrine, it is clearly established in the Constitution. But why is it that governors do what? Undermine local governments, but there is no consequence for it? You know that this whole Supreme Court judgment, it's not the first intervention at safeguarding the local government, but they push the federal government, to the wall. And so, for citizens, if you're here, there are 8,809 wards in the country. Those wards are represented by councillors, and every Nigerian belongs to a ward. And you need to know how these wards function so you can ask these governors the right question. And I think the presentation this morning clearly outlined what are the challenges and what needs to be done. And my plea is we need to pay attention to the local government councils, just like we've done at the federal level. But please, in paying attention to the local government, the basis shouldn't be the fact that they've been granted financial autonomy. Because I worry that we are paying attention to local governments now because financial autonomy, to a large extent, have been granted to local governments. And that's why I have a fundamental problem. It needs to go beyond that because it's not the is-all and be-all of this conversation.
You know what they say, money speaks, and it seems like that's what we're paying attention to at the moment. But your point about the legal reform we need to do speaks to Professor's point about a consensus, because if we're going to make any amendments to the Constitution, you have how many lawmakers to go through? Big questions on where the various interests lie and whether we'll be able to get enough lobbying to actually ensure this happens. Ms. Shonibari, I'm conscious about time, so I want to come to you about to speak you started earlier about the deliberateness of inclusive governance, and perhaps in getting it right, whether in terms of gender, youth representation, PWDs, maybe the local government is really where the magic bullet once again comes in, right? But give us practical steps. What should the local government start to pay attention to if we're going to enshrine inclusive governance and representative governance at that level?
Thank you. And I will hinge my thoughts on two things. First, inclusivity, and the other, the importance of resource allocation, inclusive resource allocation. So first, in relation to inclusivity, a lot of times we say women's participation and we say women's representation and we use them interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different. And in terms of exactly what can be done, we need to first of all have this, separate understanding that women, and I'm using women as the example here, so when I'm talking about historically marginalized groups, I'm talking about women, persons with disabilities, young people, and ethnic minorities. But women will be my entry point, so I'm not mentioning those for every time I talk. Now, that women participate in politics, in local governance, does not mean that they are represented. And that they are represented does not mean they are included, which is where there is work at the local government area. In terms of women's political participation, we've seen a lot around that. Yaga, part of data that Yaga has released is the number of women who, vote and who come out to vote every time that we do. And we usually see that increase in the number of women that participate in the electoral processes, whether they are mobilizing or... So that's not, personally, I don't think that's where we have a lot of problems. Let's move to representation. I've used data to explain the underrepresentation. And that is important for the exact role that the local government will be playing. I hope that is clear.
I think it's your fault.
No, it's not. It's not.
It looks...
That's important. So that women are, like I said, participating does not mean. So we also need to have that increased representation. And finally is inclusivity. Now, when we talk about inclusivity, people who work on disability issues, we always say something that I love. They say that nothing for us without us. So it means that in policy formulation, in allocation of resources, not just in terms of budgetary allocation, but also in terms of spend, because you know that oftentimes what is allocated is not what is released. What is released is not what is spent. And so we want to make sure that there is that, equal representation at that level. Now, let me anchor my final thought on that, on the importance of resource allocation. Now, resource allocation at the local level, which also helps us in terms of the actual thing that local government can be playing, is first in terms of financial resource allocation. One of the functions of the local government is to ensure, primary healthcare, participating in primary healthcare, education, vocational skills, and such other responsibilities. Now, if we are not adequately allocating resources, financial resources, in a way that meets the peculiar and intersecting needs of these four groups of people, then the local government will not be performing its functions equally. And so at that local government level, what we expect to see is that in the allocation and the utilization of financial resources, we must be inclusive, we must be equal. That is financial. The second is in terms of technical resource allocation. Technical resource allocation relates to issues around training, vocational skills that we've talked about, and so many other things that goes on. Oftentimes, you find out that women, persons with disabilities, and all of these groups are not included in that particular process. It's the same criticism I've given to the student loan, for instance. Student loan came out, but are there components of it that responds to the fact that young women will have historic barriers that will prevent them from enjoying it equally like men. So even in allocation and utilization of technical resources, we must make sure that, you know, there is that sensitivity to the barriers that has hindered these persons. And finally is material resource allocation. So when you're distributing palliatives, for example, or you are distributing those things that we distribute at the local level, just especially in relation to those functions, if we are not sensitive to the fact that a person with disability, we need support to be able to, for instance, get to the location, then the local government area is not performing its function. If we are not sensitive to the fact that women sometimes, we need permission from their husbands to access primary health care, then it means that the local government is not equally, you know, performing its responsibility. So my point is this: you see, all of those functions of the local government area that has been, you know, stated in the 4th schedule must be done with a lens where we have equality, inclusivity, fairness, justice, recognizing that there are barriers who will hinder historically marginalized people from equally enjoying, you know, the performance of these functions by the local government. Thank you.
And perhaps part of how we can do that is to revisit our federal character principle, because that seems to be the most enshrined of representation in Nigeria, at least the one we adhere to, depending on where you look. I know that we are essentially out of time for the panel, but it's very important for me to get Professor Remi's thoughts just finally, right? You'd written a paper for Agora Policy, and you started to talk about it, the difference between local government and local governance. And for the purposes of this conversation, expand for us just very quickly. What's that difference? Why is it important?
It's very important because traditionally, government is focused on rules, on regulations, and handing out orders to communities. But within the context of governance, we are talking about openness, we are talking about consultation, we are talking about collaboration, co-governance. These are features that you find in a governance setting rather than the emphasis on local government. Secondly, very important concerning resource mobilization. Under a government process, if the government can't do it, if it says it has no resources, then it can't be done. But in a governance setting, if the government can't do it, we have to look into the community to say who else can do it, who can help the government do it. So it's a different kind of mentality, a different understanding about the idea of the resources of the local government. It's not the resources of the local government alone, but the resources of the community. So we can always get things done, whether the government has the resources to initiate it or not. Then we also talk about letting the sunshine in. It's an open system, because if people can bring their resources to embark on development projects, it means that they understand what's going on, they know what's going on, they are informed, they are part of the process. So it's that kind of engagement, the level of engagement that we talk about in the context of governance. And then lastly, when we talk about governance, and this is very important, especially for the decision of the Supreme Court, what it says is that the reason why state joint local government account was established in the first place was that under the previous arrangement, where all local government go to the accountant general to get their money, it was a little bit rowdy, unwieldy, and difficult. So in order to tidy the process, they say, why not allow the accountant general to deal with only 6 governments rather than dealing with 774 local governments? What it then means is that it recognizes that there are multiple levels of government, and that these multiple levels of government collaborate to make governance easy. What it then means is that the emphasis should be on cooperation among the levels of government, collaboration to solve problems. This is a very important dimension. And the second part would then be, how do we then ensure that this collaboration happens within the context of the rule of law of mutual respect for each level of government? Because what we find is that even when you have the law, you have the decision made, if you don't find a way of getting these governments engaged with one another, there will always be problems. The significance of the decision of the Supreme Court is that it uses that framework of collaboration to then enforce the idea of getting the money to the local government. Because it says a local government that is not democratically elected, the federal government who is in charge of disbursing the federal account should therefore not give the money to those local governments. So it is still within that concept of multi-level governance that the Supreme Court decision has been made. What is left for us is to then see how we can bring these multiple levels of government, not only to work with one another, but to bring the people in as the center of development and public activities. That's the centrality of governance and local government.
Thank you, Professor. Look, by no means is this conversation exhaustive. Unfortunately, time will not permit us, but I want to say a big thank you to my panelists, Mr. Samson Itodo, Haji Salawo Ozigi, Ms. Buki Shonibare, Bukola Shonibare, and of course to Professor Remi Ayede. This is my time. There are special interventions that will be made and a Q&A, and I'm sure that it will help to expand the conversation a little more. Thank you very much for listening and giving us your time.
And I have to say a big thank you as well to the moderator, Ms. Nabila Usman, for your time. We'll take some interventions and, of course, question and answer, mainly to follow up with what the panel has said at this point in time. And I'm sure we would also get to follow through with the questions. So, Nabila, you may still want to hold on to your panel, certainly to get them to respond and, of course, moderate that session. But let's quickly take some interventions. We'll take an intervention from somebody joining on Zoom, Ms. Yemsi Nathaniel, Head of Programs for RAPA. She'll be making an intervention for just about 3 minutes. All right? I will just confirm with the tech team. Okay, so looks like I would move on and then revert to that. But in the meantime, we can take an intervention from Mrs. Ojobo Atuluku, who is the former director, internal programs at Christian Aid. She will be making an intervention. Please, if it's convenient for you to sit, you can as well sit to make your intervention for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and let me use this opportunity to also appreciate everybody who is here, and also appreciate the partnership between the Rural Policy and the partners who are doing this happening, and to appreciate my corporate foundation as well around this. I think that this topic is really topical. Without interventions like this, we will end up having a very good decision from the Supreme Court that sits in our policy, and then that's the end of the dissemination of have something, and yet there's no change in what's happening. And so this is an opportunity that we have to ensure that the development does get to the people as we expect. It's quite interesting that this conversation is also happening on this time of the national protests that are ongoing. And I think that this is one opportunity for such protests to also be able to have outlets and direction as to who to target while there's dissatisfaction in the polity. It's quite critical. I don't want to repeat what the distinguished speakers and panelists said, contributions have made, but it's quite critical that at this point in time, there are four opportunities, 4 corners, let me say, of the square for citizens and our officials to take a position on. One is who is accountable for what where we are going, for the accountability in local government, now that we have financial autonomy in local government. 2 is who is responsible, and here we've been talking about issues of capacity and capability. Who is responsible to deliver on these services? And I think these are areas we shouldn't forget. And who should be consulted? And we appreciate the initiatives that groups like Canada are introducing, the deliberative democracy and the role of that in decision making. And I think that's something that we can do all over Nigeria. We are people who consult traditionally. Democracy just comes with a Western face, but if you go into our history, consultation is something that we are very good at as a as a people and as peoples within the country. And the third is who needs to be informed. There's been a lot of conversation here. I appreciate the presentation, the excellent presentation that was made, and the opportunities that we lose in terms of knowledge of what's happening in our local governments. We saw one of the areas we covered was also the functions of the local government. These functions can only happen if we have people spread across these 4 areas of accountability, responsibility, consultation, and information. If anyone is missing, we won't get it right. And so every citizen needs to find where to stand. And where to stand, not just on social media, but also in engaging directly with our communities. I am personally challenged by Ms. Nadito about the questions, quite interactive presentation of the questions she was doing, because sometimes we move so high up that we forget that without feet on the ground, no amount of theory is going to lead to any change in practice. I want to really appreciate everybody here. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ochobo Atuluku, former Director, Internal Programs at Christian Aid. Our contributor online is back, Madam Yemisin Nathaniel, Elder Programs and Rapper. She'll be speaking for just 3 minutes for our intervention. While we'll bring... Let me quickly recognize Madam Ugo Chimerem, representing the Executive Chairperson of Fiscal Responsibility Commission, who is also here, and also recognize the fact that Mr. Marawapa, Director, Yarado Center, is also here with us. Okay, let's go online and get the intervention from the online participants at this time. Madam Yamisi, are you able to connect with us? Oh dear, while we wait for that connection to be successful, I'm sure she has a lot to say. In fact, I do have an insight into her contribution. She's quite excited about this and had to say with regards to this. Madam Yamisi, are you able to connect with us? Okay, looks like we would move on. Also to recognize Imam Fawad Adeyemi, the Chief Imam of Alabiya Mosque, who is also here with us this very day to listen through this very important session. While we make an attempt to connect back with Ms. MC Nathaniel, Dr. Dauda Garba, who is the Director of CDD, is also here. He will be making his own intervention for the next few minutes as well. Let's pass on the microphone to the CDD Director as well.
Yeah, permit me to speak on the signature. My name is Dauda Garba, and I want to first of all acknowledge this great work from Agora policy. I am happy that Waziri Adio has been able to move this into like a national debate of this nature. And knowing, having worked under him at the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative and Technical Advisor, issue of policy engagement have been very dear to his heart, and I'm really happy the kind of progress that I've been with today. In fact, just 5 things I want to speak to, and that will be very quick. The first of these has to do with the centralization and decentralization issues that are embedded in the local government conversation. And it takes one to the issue of federalism. And as a student of federalism, I've had the opportunity of writing a theory exam comparing 5 federalisms around the world: India, Canada, America, Nigeria, and Switzerland. And what I find is that there is no single, a one-size-fits-all federalism all over the world. And why I'm saying this is that I remember the present president had the opportunity of engaging on this issue during the time of the president, and there were huge conversations about what constitutes who are the parties in the federalism. States, that's the central government and the component units. Nobody speaks about the local governments. And today, these issues will come to hurt us in one way or the other. But I think that for a country that has a constitution that DNA how to address issues of finances is something that is full time, it's something that has a time that has come and we need to fix. I've had the opportunity of implementing a federalism project, particularly the local government, from 2008 to 2013 in Bayelsa State. I even was able to drive a bill that enabled the state government to declare to villages before every 14th of every month on what they receive from federal government and how they are spending that. Today, all that is on paper, given what I have years later gone to the place and realize that it's happening in that state. The second bit is that we emphasize local government by virtue of the fact that it is the closest to people. And by virtue of being closer to people, that is where we begin to witness development if actually we are going to have one. Which of course draws attention to the position by Waziri Adio that this is the most important part we need to pay due attention to. And we also believe that by virtue of being close to the grassroots, the people at that level ought to know better the approaches to the solutions of the problems they have. The third one has to do with elections. I know more attention has been given to finances, but the fact remains that elections are very central at the local government. And this is where the issue of capacity, which is going to be the fourth one, comes in. Much of the time, elections at the local governments are sham. We all know that. But the fact also remains that I cannot see why a governor will be interested in becoming, in knowing who becomes the councillor in the ward. And that is how it operates in our environment. So we need to find a way to ensure that even people beyond just the money that we are looking at, we should be able to empower local people within the ward to decide these are the top leaders we have in our midst that will take our issue to that will bring about development in the sector. I personally do not see why a vice chancellor who has finished his tenure as a vice chancellor, a director in the federal ministry, a rector, a provost in the polytechnic will not come back and say, I want to contest the office of chairman of the local government or the councillor of the local government, so that we can be able to attain the kind of development we want for our people. And lastly, there is the issue of capacity, and this has actually been made by Malam Bolaji Abdullahi. That the issues at the local government are just beyond even the money. The capacity is something essential. The bulk of the people you have as chairmen and councillors at the local government today are those who in one way or the other acted as dogs to political office or chief executives that at the end of the day, oh, what is now your party gift? One, pick a form for chairman or local government. And at the end of the day, I saw it vividly when the lady from budget was making a presentation that you see them, they are not even able to appreciate the problems of even the society or the immediate environment to say, let alone offering the kind of resolution or solution to the problem of the people. So if we are paying attention to the issue of local government, with respect, let's see beyond the finances and look at the interplay between the various areas of government on how to harness the resources available to address the development challenges of the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Dawda Garba, Director CDD. Nabila, I would have to defer to you. I think we should take 3 sets of questions, and of course, you administer how your panel responds to it. So if you would like to ask a question, we prefer short questions, okay? Short questions for the purpose of this panel. With due privilege, of course, I would come to our dear sir as well at this point in time. Okay. All right. Just before we take, I will just acknowledge the questions, of course, starting from him. I think there are 2 gentlemen there. 1, 2, 3. If you do not mind, I would not give him a number. I cannot give him a number. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, and of course take it on from there. But just before
we
then,
have a lady.
I understand.
We
yes.
have a lady with a question. So please.
Oh, the lady is the 3rd person
yes.
at the back.
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah. All right. I also understand the former commissioner is also here, Ibrahim Shetima. He's with the mic, I presume. at the moment. So please, Nabila, just accommodate my bias at this time. All right, please, let's just listen to your intervention shortly, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'm Ibrahim Shetima, that has been pointed out, former Commissioner, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. I represented major states in the Commission in the last 6 weeks. My intervention would be the point and not in prose because of time constraints. I took note of all the issues raised by the panelists here. Principally, the capacity of the functionaries at the local government level, the existence of robust audit trail, and I want to also put on record that I would have been here if I had not read Nigeria Abuse article of the Nottingham Sunday, where he referred to the events of today, and I didn't need to personally here, because the accountability at local government issue is something very dear to my heart. Now, having said that, if like the last speaker, Garba Homa also have been meeting as an order, as said, the functionaries at the local government level require showing up of their capacity, and there's no robust audit to it. I want to suggest that before we rush into implementing the Supreme Court decision or ruling, as it were, there's a requirement or a need for a broad-based consensus on a transitional arrangement. The transitional arrangement, I think, is very, very important in order to have a seamless move from one system to another, which is financial authority from the local government. And this is very, very imperative because while, like Mr. Osiki said, there is the existence of internal audits in all the local governments in the country. I want to posit that the internal audits are only the last line of defense in the issue of accountability. While in the case of the first two pillars of government, the federal and state, the constitutional instructions 120 and 80 specifically provide for consolidated revenue fund. There is no parallel provision at local government level. So we need from the beginning to have constitutional check on the expenditure pattern of the local government.
Yes, that's the.
Is the inclusivity that has been happened extensively by my sister, Michelle. Yes, I just want to advise him because, like I said, I want to speak in prose. And the Prof made a mission in his last intervention. We need local domestic resource mobilization to balance the issue of resource allocation and utilization that is stressed. If we cannot have enough to allocate to the requirements, what are we doing at the local level to mobilize these resources? So while we're talking about utilization and allocation and inclusivity, we should also pay attention to mobilization. The next issue is what was raised by Mr. Itobaji on deliberative democracy. Yes, it's a very good initiative which Yada has started with pilot scheme in Sokoto and Lagos, like you said. The question I want to ask here, does it have a legal teeth to avoid circumvention of a consensus on developmental issues that has been agreed by the community, to avoid circumvention by the councillors and chairmen at the local government level? Finally, I'm not sure if there was any legal presentation here or a TikTok has been given to it on the implication, the deeper implication of Supreme Court ruling of July 11. I want to find out if it is not. I don't know. I don't have any simple appointment to interpret the ruling, but I am very, very much interested in knowing does the Supreme Court ruling, or rather has the competence to out explicit provisions of the Constitution, especially Section 162, 5 and 6, which provide for the operation of joint account at the state level.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. We're truly grateful. We would have to, at this point in time, take Malam Balaji Abdullahi, his own view to this. And of course, we'll start with the question and answer. Even at that, we have to take the minister, former minister first, at this point in time. Yes, please, sir.
Thank you very much. Just a question. I want to thank all the panelists. I've learned so much listening to all of you. And the moderator did a very good job of putting everything together. We all have agreed that the Supreme Court ruling was the final point in the question of how to structure the finances in terms of the relationship with the state. I would say it's like God's case, no appeal. But I also believe that the task of nation building is never done. And I have a strong feeling that sooner rather than later, we will come back to this issue of what to do with the local government in terms of its relation with the state and the federal, or what kind of structure do we want to have, like 2-tier government or 3-tier government. And when that happens, I think these issues, this kind of ruling that comes to problems. It depends on the kind of problem. Now, and that's why I would want to ask Professor Aite this question. Because I noticed that you tried consistently to make a distinction between local government and local governance. Now, to what extent is the independence of local government, and this something tried to talk about the independence of local, emphasize the independence of local government. To what extent is the independence of local government a requirement to good governance at the local government level? How much independence of local government do we need to really have good governance at local government? Thank you.
So we will take the questions together so that we can then come to the responses, and we'll take notes. So very quickly, let's start on this side of the room. There's the lady there. Let's take her question. Please identify yourself. Keep your question as brief as possible. And where possible, one question, and direct it to someone on the panel. We'll make it easier.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to say thank you for noticing me. My name is Blessing Amajama from Jam Development. So earlier this year, I was at the site for borehole drilling, and there were some men that came that they were from local governments, how local government areas, and they are collecting levy for borehole. I'm to dig up water for myself, and I'm still to pay levy for 10,000 naira. So we had to pay because the engineer said that was what is usually done here. You have to pay levy. So I went to the state revenue. I did not see anything. They told me there was no remittance. I went to the committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms and got a tax harmonization list of tax, approved taxes to be paid by the local government. And borehole levy was
not there.
2017. I went back to the local government. So I was on and off with this student. So my question is to the chairman of the local government association. What do you do? How do you checkmate this honoraries, this local government chairman that people that go below? Because camera are not source point, are not pointing directly at them through social media. There are people that will just wake up and you see them, then you wake up following the outrageous story. So how do you allow monitoring and evaluation? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come to this side of the room. There's a gentleman in green wearing glasses.
Hello everyone. My name is Deolo Laiwai from World Institute for Peace. Actually, I have one question and then one contribution.
I must apologize. Because of time, your contribution may not ask your question. Yes.
You have been talking about the problem, and then I want to take one solution.
Very briefly, 30 seconds.
If truly you want to argue, and there can be Nigeria. I believe I will commend the lawmaker, the Nigerian lawmaker towards the federal government autonomy that they passed, but they have not finished their job at all. Until we make sure that the INEC is the one that is conducting local government election. I will just use my state as a case study. There is a constitution that guides the state electoral commission. But right now, my state wants to have their election February 2025. But the person, the chairman of the commission, happened to be the contest during the 2023 last election as federal lawmaker. Now, they appointed him as the essay to the governor on the legal matter. Now, he's a politician, and the constitution stated that if you want to be the chairman of that commission, you must not be a can't member to any political office. So now, if truly you want to have that, you must make sure, because that's the only way. If the politicians ever since in each local government, they are appointing, not electing. And then that is the reason why you're having all these political talk.
So I'll quickly ask you, what's your state?
Now, my state is that
what state are you referring to?
I'm from Osun State.
Osun State, okay.
Yes.
Let's get to your question very quickly.
My question is that based on what happened in your state, I want to ask the Agon and the rural policy.
One person, please.
What are the things that you are doing in order? Is there any, have you been taking steps based on what happened in your state? You know that local government have just made a declaration that all the money that is coming from the federal government.
The question, please.
And then what are the things that they are doing in order not to make this thing spread to other states? Before you know it,
all right.
in the next 2 weeks now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate the rigor and the passion you used to ask your question, which we'll come to. I need to beg you, because I see another woman, and I'm sorry, but it's very important to me that we do hear female voices in questionings, right? So just let me go to the woman, and then the final man that was pointed to, whom I don't know, so we might do Tinini Tanana to pick who. But please, very quickly.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria Amara. I'm from the Development Impact by Finance Initiative. So I have 2 questions. One is on citizen engagement.
One question, please. Choose which one.
Actually similar anyway. So on citizens engagement, I have a question here. Where do I begin from? Is it from my local government of residence or origin? This brings me to issue of indigenization. Now, I have been in Abuja since I was like 10 years, and right now I'm about 40-something. And can I be able to go to a local government in Abuja and claim that I have rights to anything, Then another one similar to it is like on election, we are asked to vote. How many times have we voted in our local government area? Now I'm based in Abuja, and the voters card restricts me to voting only in my location. So how do I go back? When I'm a resident in Abuja and I have a card that allows me to vote in Abuja, how do I go back to my state, to local government?
Thank you. Thank you. So the very last question that we're taking, I'm actually going to come to the front of the room. There was a hand up in front, right? I'm sorry. I know. Unfortunately, time will not permit.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iso Simon from Gobi Wash, Nigeria. My question is directly to Olga here.
Who's Yoga? Mr. Itodo.
Yes.
Right.
We have 774 governments in Nigeria, and today we're talking about government autonomy. And we discovered that the large part of these councillors and those who in the villages, they are not aware of what we are doing in Abuja. What are the efforts to reach out to this local government to have them maximum awareness of what is going on here in this hall? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to come back to the panel very quickly, right? The Honorable Commissioner was able to sneak in a question, if you remember. And I think that Ms. Shonibara, it's perfect for you because you have a legal background. You're speaking about the legality of the Supreme Court essentially interpreting and issuing a final judgment on something that's in the Constitution. If you could speak on that.
I won't be able to speak on it in depth because I've not done the analysis myself. But the only thing I would answer that question on would be what Mr. Bolaji talked about in terms of the fact that I believe that by the time we do a deep dive and analysis of the Supreme Court judgment, which Mr. Waziri has said that we should not do, we would be able to, identify some of those gaps. But I agree with him in terms of the subsections in that section 162, which, because of the provision of that section, contravenes, some part of the decision that has been made in terms of having joint accounts. So if you say have joint accounts, and I think maybe Samson and Oga will be able to speak to you. If you say having joint account, how do you achieve financial autonomy when there will be joint account? And in that joint account, who are the signatories to it? Would that signatory require that the state governor still signs to it, which in itself, is a contravention of that decision that has been made? Because a governor can say, well, I am not signing this. So in itself, it has not granted full financial autonomy if the local government chairman will still have to rely on the decision, on the signature. So I agree with him that there are part of the decision that impact on constitutional provision, particularly I think section 162, subsection 5 and 6 as he mentioned, which we still need to look at. Maybe there will be need for constitutional amendment in alignment with the Supreme Court judgment, or we wait till we get to that point where there is, shredding of that decision before we know what next.
Thank you. There was a question that the one-time minister asked, right, on whether all we're doing right now really does equate good governance at local government level.
Well, I think you started with the engagement with independence or autonomy. I see my supervisor wrote a monograph which he titled Picking the Pebbles While Crossing the Streams, to describe the quest for local government autonomy under the Babangida administration. The point is really this: no government is completely autonomous. They are all subject to the Constitution and the law of the country. Now, the idea is that there is jurisdiction for each level of government. And what you find is the relative capacity of each level of government to assert itself and carry out its functions without interference. That's the idea of autonomy that we are talking about. And what we have seen is that it is not just a matter of constitution, it's also a matter of clout. Until this ruling that says we can't give, the federal government should not give money to states without elected council or those with caretaker committees, the governors knew that caretaker committees were illegal. Lower courts have made that decision, but they went to caretaker committees anyway. So that's where is the cross of autonomy, and which then brings us to the idea of that rule of law, values of governance are very central to the idea of good governance. Some people say politics is real politics. Don't bring morality or values into it. When you do that, you'll crash a society. There must be standards that are acceptable and red lines, even in politics. When you don't have that, you will crash society.
Thank you, Professor.
Recording stopped.
DG Ozigi, there was a question on checkmating the excesses of chairpersons and officials at local government level. I think the lady was talking about boreholes and where she has to pay certain fines. How do you checkmate those excesses?
Okay. Thank you. I just add a little bit to what Madam Ashonibara has mentioned on the state and local government joint accounts. I think the National Assembly is still working on that after the pronouncement, to know whether that there's any amendment that will happen on that. Because the state governors too, there are a lot of issues that happen, a lot of transactions that happen on that joint account. There are some areas where the state governors have to help the local government to pay their bills. And of course, we know because of interference, some of them are carrying manpower that are not required to drive the activities of the local government and thereabout. So we are waiting that constitutional amendment, and we are hopefully thinking that that will solve a lot of problems on the state and local government joint account. And of course, like the Prof has said, the understanding, cooperation and collaboration of the levels of government is quite important if all of us are on the same page and on the same side as far as this autonomy is concerned. To the lady who mentioned obnoxious levies on boreholes and all of that, obviously I think she's more enlightened now that she has a list of the levies and taxes that is allowed for local government, and the first thing that will have happened is to refuse that, and the course of law will have taken, to resolve that. Obviously, I'm not aware of any borehole charges. A lot of revenues happen through some private public partnership thing with local government, and maybe she will have gone further to probe into where they are really coming from before she part away with the hard-earned 30,000 naira.
Perhaps file an official complaint.
No, yes, or have a final official
address.
complaint and get that sorted out.
So let's have you respond to the question on ensuring that what's happening in Oyo State does not spread to other states.
Yes, to me, it's going to be very, very difficult. Nigeria is not a banana republic. We are happy with the present administration struggling to use this angle to see if there can be administrative and financial autonomy for local government. To us and the generalities of Nigeria, it is the benefit of all of us who are local Gs, as far as I'm concerned. No matter how metropolitan you may look, you will still go back to your local government. So we know that it's going to be beneficial to the running of this country, and the pronouncement, that Supreme Court decision, at least has probed the awareness of Nigerians to have a focus and know that resources is going to the local government. Why are we not delivering the services that is expected at those local government? These questions will come, and by the time everybody is mobilized to begin to think of what is coming to you, your local government, you will now be asking a lot of questions. And wherever citizens need to assist the local government to bring the important growth and development that is supposed to happen at that level, it will now be coming. Some people are holding on to their resources, personal resources, or opportunities they have to bring in investors to some of those local areas because they believe that those who are in place are not delivering the services. Like I've said, not all of them has it. They also have their own tutoring challenges. I don't want to talk about that. I'm just here to look at the resources.
Thank you.
And with the opportunity we have in Algon, we know that after that pronouncement, a lot of things is beginning to happen. Investors are coming in. We're in partnership with the NNPC. We're in partnership with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Nigeria is looking at other alternative sources of sustainable energy, that will help the artisans, the little people, the market women and all of that to be able to do their activities. Government cannot do everything. We need to do our best and make sure we create the enabling environment for activities, economic activity to flourish.
Thank you, DG Ozigi. Mr. Todo, I'll have you answer the last two questions, right? There was a question on essentially indigenship versus where you're resident, right? And how, first of all, engagement, but also the voting question.
Well, to the lady at the back, so if you want to in a local government elections, and because this is a public forum, I think it's worth reiterating that the only INEC has the responsibility of compiling and managing voters' register. At the state electoral commissions don't register voters. They use the register that INEC uses for national elections, for state elections. And so if you're a registered voter and you want to vote in a local government election in your state of origin, in cases where your state of residence and your state of origin are different, what you need to do is to transfer. So if you're in FCT and you want to vote in a local government elections in your state, you would have to apply to transfer your voter registration details back to your state so that your name will appear in the voters register for that state, because the State Electoral Commission would use the voter register given to them by INEC for the conduct of that election. And where do you begin? If you're a resident in the FCT, you are resident within a local government. You should be interested in what happens in the local government where your government of origin. If you have the bandwidth to do so, please feel free to do that. There's nothing preventing you from being active in both areas. I think there was a question the commissioner asked about the legality of the people's assemblies. There's no legality at the moment. We're currently working on institutionalizing people assemblies, and that will come by way of legislation at the state. I think there was a point that was raised, and I just wanted to harp on this, and is this point about the independence of the local governments vis-a-vis the Supreme Court judgment. And it's not Mr. Waziri's sole position that we shouldn't discuss that judgment. We, the partners, decided that for a conversation of this nature, that we focus on, the outcomes of the judgment and its implication, as opposed to looking at debates. And this is the reason. Often we don't engage, we clamor for judicial activism, because what the courts have done is to engage in what we call judicial activism. They've gone ahead to interpret provisions of the Constitution in a way and manner that raises a lot of questions. And why people are asking is, there are cases when the Supreme Court have been called upon to debate and decide on political matters that have great implications for our democracy. And what have they done? They've reneged and they've abandoned that responsibility. But in this particular case, they've chosen, to do what? To interpret the Constitution. Now, there are two schools of thought. The first one, there are people who are conservatives, and there are people who are in the social legal school, that yes, the whole concept of judicial legislation, that the courts can actually make laws by way of interpreting provisions of the Constitution. So you have these debates, and we feel that this is not a legal debate, that we should have
a lot of effort to get quite a number of people who are here to be here today at this time. It's very, very important that we're able to get this number of people and this quality representation. And the efforts to get everyone in here has been quite notable. So I would like to invite Dr. Omar Yakubu, Executive Director, at this point in time with CFTPI to join us. That's Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, as he makes his way to give vote of thanks to everybody who has attended at this time.
You have already done half of the job. On behalf of Agora Policy and its partners, Yaga Africa, Samson Itodu, Budget IT, Premium Times, The Cable, staff of the Center for Fiscal Transparency, I would like to thank everybody for coming and for a time well spent. We have spent 4 hours today here, and thank you for your coming. I also definitely have to thank Dr. Koli Shetima, who is the funder of this exercise, of this program, and the presenter, Madam Ayomide. We thank you. The last panel, discussions, the 4 panelists, Ms. Nabila Usman, we thank you too. I saw Imam Fuad somewhere. We thank you for coming. The latest minister in town, but he's still looking very young. Oga Bolaji, thank you for coming and staying. Also, Senator, you're distinguished, thank you very much. Algon, I invited you and he kept on putting you on the spot. Thank you for coming. And let's not forget the organizers, the photographers, the food, people that give us food, even though we have not eaten yet, we still have to thank them. Thank you for coming, and we hope you appreciate us next time whenever we invite you. The Twitter handle is there, Agora Policy Sunday. So there, Agora Policy, can follow us for more updates. Very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much as well, Dr. Yakubu, for your insight. All right, with that said, I think it's a comfortable place to say thank you, everybody. Yes. So, oh yes, just before we step out of the room, we started off by acknowledging our country, Nigeria, with the national anthem. If you may, we will just stand up for the next few minutes as we observe the Nigerian national anthem at this point in time. So please, while we observe the national anthem, it's our proper procedure in the country to keep the room still, devoid of conversation, and we can of course carry that out shortly. So please, you may want to be on your feet. I see some people seated. Please kindly stand as we take on the Nigerian national anthem. Thank you. We may also stop talking. Thank you, everybody. My name is Femi D. Amele. I'm Director, Data Fight. And we're getting better with the anthem, I would say.